Imagine this. You gave your heart, your time, your love, and your energy. You were there on the days no one else was. You fought battles that weren't even yours to fight just to see him smile. And yet, when it was his turn to show up for you, he hesitated. Maybe he took you for granted. Maybe he assumed you'd always be there, waiting, forgiving, understanding. But let me tell you something powerful. There is no greater pain than realizing too late what you had and what you lost. And that is exactly what he needs to feel. Not through anger, not through revenge, not through desperate attempts to prove your worth, but through silence, through success, through the undeniable glow that comes when a woman rises after being broken. Because here's the truth, nothing haunts a person more than the memory of someone they lost but can never replace. Walk away with grace, not bitterness. Move forward with purpose, not pain. Let your absence be louder than your presence ever was. Because when you elevate, when you heal, when you become everything he never thought you'd be without him, that's when he will feel it. Not in the moment, not when you beg for respect, but when he looks back and realizes that he had gold in his hands and let it slip through his fingers. Your power is not in making him feel pain intentionally. Your power is in becoming so untouchable, so radiant that his biggest regret will be losing you. And by then, it won't even matter to you because you will have already won. There is a power in silence that words can never match. When someone has taken your presence for granted, the greatest lesson you can teach them is through your absence. You don't need to scream, beg, or explain. You don't need to prove why you were worth fighting for. The moment you step away with dignity, leaving behind only the echo of who you were, is the moment they will begin to feel the weight of what they lost. People only truly understand the value of something when it's no longer theirs to claim. It's human nature to overlook what feels permanent, to assume that someone who has always been there will always remain. But the moment you remove yourself from the equation, the void you leave behind becomes impossible to ignore. The calls go unanswered, the familiar presence disappears, the warmth you once brought fades, and suddenly they realize what they had was rare. It's not in the instant you walk away that the pain sets in, but in the days that follow when they look around and see that no one understands them the way you did. No one fights for them the way you did. No one loves them the way you did. This is not about playing games or seeking revenge. This is about reclaiming your power. When you choose to walk away with grace, when you stop explaining yourself and simply let your absence be felt, that is when the truth dawns on them. And by the time they wake up to what they lost, you will have already stepped into a version of yourself so radiant, so unstoppable, that going back will never be an option. Because a woman who has learned her worth never looks back. She only moves forward, leaving behind a lesson they will never forget. The greatest response to being undervalued is not anger, not revenge, not pleading for someone to realize your worth. It is growth, it is success, it is becoming everything they never thought you could be without them. Because when you rise, when you evolve, when you step into the highest version of yourself, that is when the pain of losing you truly begins to sink in. There is something profoundly powerful about transformation. The person who once doubted you, who thought you would break without them, suddenly sees you thriving. They see you laughing, glowing, achieving without a trace of the person they once thought they had control over. It is in this moment, when they realize that their absence did not weaken you but strengthened you, that regret starts to build. They begin to understand that they were not your source of happiness, your strength, or your success. You were always capable of standing on your own, and now you are standing taller than ever. This is not about pretending to be okay or putting on a show. This is about genuinely stepping into your power, about redirecting all the love and energy you once poured into someone else back into yourself. It's about chasing dreams, breaking limits, proving, not to them, but to yourself, that you were always meant for more. The moment you stop looking for validation from the one who couldn't appreciate you, you start attracting everything that aligns with your true worth. And by the time they realize what they lost, by the time they regret not seeing your value, it will no longer matter to you, because you will be too busy living a life that makes their absence irrelevant. Your success, your happiness, your transformation, will be the loudest silence they will ever hear. And nothing is more painful than knowing that someone you once took for granted became untouchable the moment they walked away. The moment you stop seeking validation from someone who couldn't see your worth is the moment you reclaim your power. Too often we give people the authority to define our value. We wait for their approval, their recognition, their love, as if their perception of us is what makes us whole. But here's the truth. Your worth was never something for someone else to decide. You were enough before they came into your life, and you are enough after they leave. The pain of losing you begins when they realize you no longer need them to feel complete. There is something deeply unsettling about watching someone rise without you, someone you once thought needed you to survive. He expected you to beg, to break, to seek closure that would soothe his guilt. But you don't need his validation, you don't need his acknowledgement. The second you stop looking to him for answers and start finding them within yourself, the shift happens. The moment you stop proving yourself to someone who never deserved you in the first place, he will feel it, he will see it, and that is where his pain will begin. People regret losing what they once controlled. They regret losing someone who made them feel significant. And when they see you walking away standing tall, unshaken, unapologetically yourself, that's when it stings. Because it's not just about losing you, it's about losing the version of themselves that they were when they had you. They will question themselves, their choices, their actions. And by then, you won't be watching. You'll be too busy building, thriving, glowing with a kind of peace and confidence that no one can take from you again. Your value does not decrease because someone failed to see it. Your love does not become less powerful because someone failed to cherish it. When you understand this, you stop begging to be chosen. You stop waiting for someone to wake up and see your worth. Instead, you wake up and see it for yourself. And the moment you do, you become the one thing he will never be able to replace. Regret is a slow poison. A realization that creeps in long after the moment has passed. It doesn't hit when you walk away. It doesn't sink in when he still believes you'll come back. No, regret is the silence that lingers in the spaces you once filled. It is the emptiness of knowing that what was once taken for granted is now gone forever. And that is where the real pain begins. He may not have seen your worth when you were standing right in front of him, loving him with everything you had. He may have thought you would always be there, that your heart was a place he could return to whenever he pleased. But life has a way of teaching lessons in the most unexpected ways. When he sees you smiling without him, when he watches you step into a version of yourself that no longer waits for his validation, he will feel it. And nothing is more painful than realizing too late that you lost something you can never get back. People think pain comes from losing someone, but the real agony is knowing that someone became even more incredible after you lost them. It's watching the person who once loved you fiercely no longer look back. It's knowing that the hands that once held you so tightly now hold someone else, or worse, are perfectly fine on their own. Regret is not just about loss. It's about knowing you had something rare and you let it slip away. By the time he understands what he lost, you will have already found peace in knowing that his absence was never a loss. It was a lesson. And while he wrestles with the weight of his mistakes, you will be too busy living a life so full, so radiant, that he becomes nothing more than a distant memory. Because the worst pain is not losing someone. The worst pain is realizing you lost someone who never looked back. There is nothing more powerful than a woman who chooses herself. When you stop looking back, when you stop waiting for an apology that may never come, when you finally understand that your happiness was never meant to be in someone else's hands, that is the moment you truly win. The pain of losing you doesn't come from the day you walk away. It comes from the days, months, and years that follow, when he realizes that you never needed him to become extraordinary. Moving forward isn't about proving a point. It's not about making him jealous or hoping he notices your growth. It's about becoming so deeply in love with your own journey that his absence becomes irrelevant. Because the truth is, the one who left you questioning your worth was never meant to define it. The one who took you for granted was never meant to keep you. And the one who couldn't see your value was never meant to have a place in your future. Time will pass and he will look back. He will remember the way you cared, the way you fought for him, the way you stood by his side when no one else did. And in that moment, he will realize that the greatest mistake he ever made was believing you would always be there. But by then, you won't be. You will have already stepped into a life so full, so rich, so breathtaking that the thought of returning to the person who once failed to appreciate you won't even cross your mind. Because the real victory isn't in making him feel the pain of losing you. The real victory is in no longer caring whether he does or not. And when you reach that place, you will have already won. Life has a way of teaching lessons in silence. The deepest pain is not inflicted by anger, nor by words, nor by any attempt to make someone regret their choices. The deepest pain comes from absence, from the undeniable realization that what was once taken for granted is now unreached. When you walk away, not with bitterness but with grace, when you choose yourself over waiting for someone to choose you, that is when the real impact is made. There will come a day when he looks around and realizes that no one understands him the way you did. No one fights for him the way you did. No one believes in him the way you did. And in that moment, regret will not be a fleeting thought. It will be a weight that sits in his chest, heavy and unshakable. But by then you will be far beyond his reach. You will be walking a path of your own, no longer defined by his absence, but illuminated by your own presence. This was never about making someone suffer. It was never about proving a point or seeking validation. It was always about you choosing yourself, healing yourself, rising into a version of you that doesn't look back. Because the moment you stop chasing closure, stop waiting for recognition, and start living for yourself, you become the one thing he can never get back. And that is where the real pain begins, not for you, but for him. Because losing you wasn't just about losing a person. It was about losing a love that was rare, a presence that was irreplaceable, and a soul that was once willing to give him everything. But by the time he realizes this, you will have already stepped into a life so full, so powerful, so complete, that he becomes nothing more than a chapter in a book you have long since finished.